The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of William Chase's mansion as New York's elite mingled below. William stood near the grand staircase, a glass of untouched scotch in his hand. At 52, his salt and pepper hair and tailored Tom Ford suit projected the image of success his media empire demanded. Board members, politicians, and celebrities orbited around him, each trying to catch a moment of his attention. If you love your family and want to listen to amazing and shocking stories, click on subscribe and avoid 20 years of bad luck in your life. Mr. Chase, your coverage of the Senate hearing was masterful, a senior congressman said, clapping him on the shoulder. William nodded mechanically, having perfected the art of appearing engaged while his mind wandered elsewhere. The annual Chase Media Group Gala had become nothing more than an obligation, a necessary performance to maintain his position at the top. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Normally, he'd ignore it during such events, but something intuition perhaps made him reach for it. The number was unknown. "Excuse me," he said to the congressman, stepping away from the crowd. In a quieter corner of the ballroom, he answered, "William Chase speaking." "Mr. Chase." The voice was unfamiliar, tense. "This is Captain Reynolds from the Harbor Patrol. We found something on your yacht that requires your immediate attention." William's grip tightened on the phone. "My yacht is docked privately. What were you doing on board?" "We received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Sir, we've found 2 children." The scotch glass nearly slipped from his fingers. "Children?" "Yes, sir. African-American twins, approximately 8 years old. They were hidden in the main cabin. They're refusing to speak to anyone." William's mind raced through possibilities: a prank, a mistake, a setup. His yacht had top-tier security. Nobody could access it without authorization. "There must be some mistake, sir. They had something with them. A photograph. It's of you and another man. They claim he's their father." The ballroom suddenly felt airless. William knew, before the captain said another word, which photograph they'd found. It was impossible, yet somehow inevitable. "Your brother, sir. They say their father was James Chase." James, his younger brother, dead for 6 months now, or so everyone believed. The brother who disappeared after their last explosive argument, leaving behind only rumors and unanswered questions. The brother whose body was never found. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, William said, ending the call. The drive to the marina passed in a blur. His driver, sensing the urgency, navigated through Manhattan streets with practiced efficiency. William stared out the window, memories of James flooding back their last conversation. The accusations, the threats. "You have no idea what's really happening, Will," James had said. "You're part of the problem, and you don't even know it." The yacht loomed before him, its white hull gleaming under the dock lights. Police boats bobbed nearby, their blue lights reflecting off the dark water. Captain Reynolds met him at the gangway, a stocky man with a weathered face. "They haven't moved from the main cabin," Reynolds said. "Child Services is on the way, but given your potential relationship to them..." William barely heard him. He was already moving toward the cabin, his footsteps hollow on the deck. The door was open. Inside, 2 children sat on the leather couch, a boy and a girl, their small hands clasped together. They looked up at him with identical dark eyes, eyes that held too much knowledge for their age. The boy spoke first, his voice steady despite its softness. "Uncle William." The photograph lay on the table between them. William picked it up with trembling fingers. It was from 5 years ago, at their mother's funeral. He and James stood side by side, still united in grief, before everything fell apart. Before James started asking questions about certain clients. Before he began his obsession with exposing what he called the truth. "Who brought you here?" William asked. The twins exchanged glances, but remained silent. Their resemblance to James was undeniable, the same determined set of their jaws, the same watchful intelligence in their eyes. "Your father. James never told me about you. He said you'd help us." The girl finally spoke. "He said when the time came, you'd know what to do." William sank into a chair, the weight of responsibility settling over him like a physical force. These children were his blood, a secret James had kept from him. But why, and why now? What had his brother gotten himself into that would lead to this moment? The yacht creaked gently in the harbor swells, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. William looked at the twins, his niece and nephew, and knew his life would never be the same. The carefully constructed walls of his world were about to crumble, and it would start here, with these two children and the mystery of his brother's death. The office of Patricia Montgomery, the Chase family's longtime legal counsel, felt colder than William remembered. 3 days had passed since finding the twins. Now safely housed in his Upper East Side penthouse with round-the-clock security, he sat across from Patricia's imposing mahogany desk, watching her review James's files with methodical precision. "Your brother was gathering evidence," Patricia said, sliding a thick folder across the desk. Her normally composed features showed signs of strain. "These aren't just random documents, William. They're methodically organized investigations into child trafficking operations." William opened the folder, his stomach tightening at the contents. Photographs of warehouses, shipping manifests, bank statements, and handwritten notes filled the pages. How long was he working on this? Based on these dates, at least 2 years. Patricia leaned forward, lowering her voice, despite being alone in her office. "James wasn't just investigating, William. He was building a case against some very powerful people. People who frequent your social circles." The implications hit William like a physical blow. He thought of countless charity galas, board meetings, political fundraisers, the spaces where power and influence intersected. How many of those smiling faces had James been investigating? "The twins," William said, his mouth dry. "Were they part of this?" Patricia's expression darkened. "I believe James rescued them. The timing of his death." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "If we can call it that, coincides with their appearance in the system. But there's more." She pulled out another document, this one bearing the letterhead of a private security firm. James hired protection for them 3 months before his disappearance. He knew he was in danger. William scanned the document, his head spinning. The security firm was one he knew well. They handled several of his media company's high-profile clients. Why didn't they come forward after his death? They were paid to stay quiet. The question is, by whom? The twins' faces flashed in William's mind, their serious eyes, their careful silence. How much did they know? How much were they carrying? "We need to move them somewhere safer," he decided. "My penthouse is too exposed." Patricia nodded, but her expression remained grave. "Already arranged. But William, there's someone else you need to meet. A journalist who's been working on a similar investigation. She contacted me yesterday, claiming she has information about James's death." A journalist. William's media instincts kicked in. This could be a trap. "Her name is Sarah Chen. She's respected, thorough, and most importantly," Patricia pulled up an article on her computer screen, "she has a personal stake in this. Her sister disappeared 3 years ago, likely a victim of the same trafficking ring James was investigating." The article showed a young Asian woman with determined eyes and a reputation for exposing corporate corruption. William recognized her work. She'd taken down a pharmaceutical company last year, exposing their illegal drug trials. "Set up the meeting," he said finally, "but somewhere public." Later that afternoon, William sat in a corner booth at the Morgan Library's cafe, watching Sarah Chen approach. She moved with purpose, her dark blazer and practical shoes marking her as someone more interested in substance than style. Without preamble, she slid into the seat across from him. "Mr. Chase," she said, her voice low and intense. "Thank you for meeting me. I'm sorry about your brother. You have information about James." Sarah pulled out a laptop, keeping it partially closed. "I've been tracking a series of disappearances, mostly children from underprivileged backgrounds. The pattern led me to several shell companies, all connected to a foundation that regularly donates to your media group's charitable causes. William felt his chest tighten. Which foundation? The Future Bright Initiative. She opened her laptop, showing him a complex web of financial transactions. Your brother contacted me 6 months ago. He had proof that the foundation was a front for child trafficking operations. But before we could meet, he disappeared. William finished. Sarah's eyes met his, and he saw the same haunted determination he'd noticed in the twins. My sister was 16 when she vanished. The police found her phone near a Future Bright Initiative youth center. 2 weeks later, they declared her case cold. And you think James found evidence connecting them to her disappearance? I think James found evidence connecting them to dozens of disappearances. And I think that's what got him killed. She glanced around the cafe before continuing. The twins, they're the key. They're not just random victims he rescued. They're witnesses. William thought of the children now hidden away in a safe house, carrying secrets that could bring down some of the most powerful people in the country. His brother's last words echoed in his mind. You're part of the problem, and you don't even know it. Help me, Sarah said, closing her laptop. Help me finish what James started. Help me find my sister. The weight of the decision pressed down on William. His carefully constructed world of media, empire, and social influence suddenly seemed built on quicksand. How much of his success had been built on turning a blind eye to the darkness lurking beneath the surface? If we do this, he said slowly, there's no going back. Sarah's expression hardened. Mr. Chase, for people like my sister, for those twins, there was never any going back. The question is, are you ready to face the truth about the world you've been part of? William's Audi crawled through the industrial outskirts of Brooklyn, where abandoned warehouses cast long shadows in the fading light. Sarah sat beside him in the passenger seat, reviewing notes on her tablet. They'd spent the past week interviewing former employees of the Future Bright Initiative, building a network of witnesses who might be willing to talk. Turn left here, Sarah directed, pointing to a narrow street between two warehouses. Our contact should be waiting in the loading bay of Building 7. Their informant, a former security guard named Martinez, had reached out through encrypted channels, claiming to have surveillance footage from the night James disappeared. William parked the car in shadows, killing the engine but leaving the keys in the ignition, a habit born from their growing paranoia. Remember, Sarah said, checking her phone one last time. If Martinez doesn't use the exact verification phrase, we leave immediately. The loading bay door was partially open, revealing a slice of darkness beyond. William felt exposed as they approached, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in his 50s, wearing a worn security uniform. The future is bright, Sarah called out, using their agreed-upon prompt. The man nodded, but the past casts long shadows. The correct response. William released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Martinez gestured them inside, glancing nervously over their shoulders. I've got something you need to see, Martinez said, leading them toward a small office. Security cameras caught something. The night your brother. The sound of car engines cut through the silence. Multiple vehicles, approaching fast. Were you followed? Martinez's face drained of color. Before either could respond, bright headlights flooded the warehouse through the loading bay entrance. The screech of tires on concrete echoed through the space. Back exit, Martinez shouted, pointing toward a metal door. Through the office, they ran. Sarah reached the office first, yanking open the door. Behind them, heavy footsteps and shouted commands filled the warehouse. William caught a glimpse of men in tactical gear, weapons raised. Martinez never made it to the office. A burst of gunfire erupted, and the security guard crumpled mid-stride. Sarah grabbed William's arm, pulling him through the office and toward the emergency exit beyond. The footage. William started to turn back. No time. Sarah shoved him forward as bullets splintered the doorframe above their heads. They burst out into an alley, the cool night air carrying the sound of more vehicles approaching. Sarah pulled a small USB drive from her pocket as they ran. Martinez sent this yesterday. She gasped between breaths. Said it was insurance copy of everything he had. Their footsteps pounded against wet pavement as they weaved through the maze of warehouses. William's lungs burned, his expensive suit now soaked with sweat. Behind them, voices echoed off walls, gaining ground. "The car's too far," Sarah said, pulling him down another alley. "We need to." A black SUV screeched to a halt at the alley's entrance. William yanked Sarah behind a dumpster as shots rang out, sparks flying where bullets struck metal. 4 o'clock, Sarah whispered urgently. "Fire escape." They made a break for it. William boosted Sarah up to the lowest platform, then jumped to catch her outstretched hand. More shots followed them up the rusty stairs, the aging metal groaning under their weight. "Roof access," Sarah pointed. "These buildings connect. We can make it to Mason Street if we." The door above them burst open. 2 men in black tactical gear emerged, weapons raised. William and Sarah froze, trapped between attackers above and below. Sarah's hand moved slowly toward her jacket pocket where the USB drive was hidden. William caught her eye, a silent understanding passing between them. In one fluid motion, she flung the drive over the edge of the fire escape while William charged upward, tackling the nearest attacker. The impact sent them both crashing into the second man. Sarah vaulted past them, using the confusion to slam the roof access door on the fingers of another emerging attacker. His scream pierced the night as William scrambled to his feet, following Sarah across the rooftop. They ran for what felt like hours, jumping between buildings, descending fire escapes, weaving through alleys until the sounds of pursuit faded. Finally, in a dimly lit street near the waterfront, they stopped to catch their breath. "The drive," William panted, leaning against a brick wall. Sarah managed a grim smile, pulling an identical USB drive from her shoe. "First rule of journalism always, keep a backup." William stared at her, newfound respect mixing with exhaustion. Martinez, her expression hardened. "Dead." They wanted to send a message. They're not just trying to stop the investigation anymore. They're eliminating everyone connected to it. William loosened his tie, now spattered with blood from their escape. "We need to get back to the twins. If they're eliminating witnesses, the safe house has my best people," Sarah assured him, but doubt crept into her voice. "But you're right, we should move them again." And William, she held up the drive. "Whatever's on here got Martinez killed. Your brother died trying to expose this. Are you sure you want to see what's on it?" William thought of James, of Martinez lying dead on the warehouse floor, of the twins' solemn faces. "I need to know. I need to understand what my brother died for." Sarah nodded, already pulling out her phone to arrange secure transport. "Then we better hurry, because after tonight, they'll be coming for us too." The contents of Martinez's USB drive glowed on William's office monitor at Chase Media Group headquarters. Financial records, shipping manifests, and surveillance footage scrolled past his eyes, each piece of evidence connecting his company more deeply to the trafficking network. His hands trembled as he recognized names of board members, major advertisers, and longtime business partners. The corporate logo on his office wall, the one he'd spent decades building into a symbol of journalistic integrity, now felt like a mockery. His brother's words echoed, "You're part of the problem." Now he understood. His empire hadn't just turned a blind eye. It had provided cover, legitimacy, and a sophisticated network for something monstrous. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus Reynolds, Executive Vice President of Operations, entered without waiting for a response. At 60, with carefully maintained silver hair and a $7,000 suit, Reynolds represented old money and boardroom power. "William," Reynolds said, closing the door behind him, "the board is concerned about your recent activities." William minimized the evidence files, but left his computer running. "Is that why you're here, Marcus?" "Board concerns. We've noticed unusual access patterns in our financial records, particularly those related to the Future Bright initiative." Reynolds moved closer, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. "And there are rumors about you working with a journalist, Sarah Chen, I believe. Since when does Chase Media Group worry about working with journalists, when those journalists have a history of attacking corporate interests?" Reynolds sat uninvited in one of the leather chairs facing William's desk. "The board feels you're becoming unstable since your brother's unfortunate passing." William's jaw tightened. "Unfortunate passing? Is that what we're calling murder now?" A flicker of something surprise. Fear crossed Reynolds' face before his corporate mask returned. "Murder is a strong word, William. James's death was ruled an accident. Like the accident waiting to happen to Sarah Chen, or the accident that killed Martinez last night." Reynolds leaned forward, dropping all pretense of friendliness. "You need to step back from this, William, for your own good. The board is prepared to vote on a temporary leave of absence, citing emotional distress. It would be generous, full benefits, complete medical coverage, and if I refuse, then we'll be forced to examine your judgment more closely. Your recent erratic behavior, the unauthorized investigations, the questionable associations." Reynolds spread his hands in a gesture of false concern. "The media can be cruel when reporting on mental health issues, especially among business leaders. Your reputation might never recover." Williams stood slowly, planting his hands on his desk. "Are you threatening me, Marcus?" "Threatening? No." Reynolds smiled again, all teeth and warning. "I'm offering you a choice. Take the leave, get some help, let this obsession with your brother's death go. Or," he shrugged, "face the consequences. The consequences of exposing child trafficking, of revealing how Future Bright Initiative uses our media platforms to hide their operations." Reynolds' smile vanished. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, William. This is bigger than you, bigger than Chase Media. There are people involved who kill journalists, who murder security guards, who traffic children while donating to charity." William's voice rose with each question. "Tell me, Marcus, how long have you known what?" William turned his monitor around, showing a series of emails between Reynolds and Future Bright Initiative's directors. "About this. About all of it. These came from James's files. You've been coordinating with them for years, helping them place sponsored content that legitimizes their operations." Reynolds' face hardened. "You wouldn't dare go public. Think about the shareholders, the employees. You'd destroy thousands of lives. Like the lives of those trafficked children. Like my brother's life. Your brother was a fool who didn't understand the natural order of things." Reynolds stood, straightening his suit. "Some people are meant to be sacrificed for the greater good, for progress, for profit." William felt ice in his veins. "The greater good? Is that how you justify it? This company, your precious media empire, it feeds on darkness, William, always has. Where do you think the money comes from? Those profit margins the board loves so much." Reynolds moved toward the door. "You have 24 hours to accept the leave of absence. After that, well," he smiled one last time, "accidents happen." After Reynolds left, William sat in silence, staring at his computer screen. Years of evidence stared back at him, proof of corruption so deep it had become part of Chase Media's DNA. His father had built this company from nothing, passed it to William with pride, and somewhere along the way, it had become a monster. His phone buzzed. Message from Sarah. "Found something big. Meet ASAP." William looked around his office, at the awards on the walls, the photos with presidents and prime ministers, the trappings of power he'd spent his life accumulating. All of it built on a foundation of exploitation and suffering. He reached for his phone, typing quickly, "Setting up press conference. Tomorrow morning, time to burn it all down." The response came immediately. "Are you sure? No going back." William thought of the twins, of Martinez lying dead on a warehouse floor, of his brother's final warning. His answer was simple. Nothing left to save. He began copying files to a secure server, knowing that by this time tomorrow, the empire he'd inherited would be ashes. But from those ashes, maybe something honest could finally grow. The safe house was a modest brownstone in Queens, deliberately unremarkable among its neighbors. William and Sarah sat across from the twins in the living room, while their security detail patrolled the perimeter. Rain tapped against the windows, creating shadows that danced across Liam's face as he finally began to speak. "Dad made us memorize everything," Liam said, his sister Maya gripping his hand. "He said if anything happened to him, we had to find Uncle William." Sarah leaned forward, her recorder running. "What did he make you memorize, Liam?" "Numbers, names, places." Liam's voice trembled, but remained clear. "He made us practice every night. Said it was a game, but we knew it wasn't." William watched his nephew's face, seeing James in every expression. "What kind of numbers?" "Bank accounts, dates, container numbers." Liam closed his eyes, reciting from memory. "HASU 4727891, arrival port of Newark, January 15th. CSQU 5829104, port of Baltimore, March 3rd. Sarah's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. "These are shipping container numbers. They match the manifests from Martinez's drive. Dad said they moved kids in them." Maya spoke up, her first words since they'd arrived. "Like they moved us." The room fell silent. William felt his chest tighten. "You were in one of those containers." Maya nodded. "Before Dad found us. We were supposed to go to a place called Highland Grove, but Dad got us out." "Highland Grove?" Sarah's head snapped up. "That's where my sister was last seen." Liam's grip on his sister's hand tightened. "It's not just a place. It's people. Important people. Dad made us remember their names too." Before he could continue, the security team's radio crackled. Movement on the north side. Multiple vehicles approaching. William was on his feet instantly. "How many?" "3 SUVs. Tinted windows. No plates." Sarah was already shutting down her laptop. "We need to move now." The first shots shattered the front windows. William dove, pulling the twins behind the couch as glass rained down. Sarah rolled behind an armchair, drawing a small handgun from her ankle holster. "Since when do you carry?" William shouted over the gunfire. "Since my sister disappeared." She returned fire through the broken window, forcing their attackers to take cover. The security team engaged from their positions, but they were outnumbered. William could hear more vehicles arriving, surrounding the house. "Panic room," he ordered, grabbing Maya while Sarah covered Liam, down to the basement. They made it to the kitchen when the back door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear burst through the smoke. Sarah fired twice, dropping one, while William shielded the children with his body. The remaining attackers opened fire. William felt a searing pain in his shoulder as a bullet grazed him. He stumbled, but kept moving, pushing the twins toward the basement door. Sarah's warning came too late. A 4th attacker emerged from the basement stairwell. William turned, using his body to shield Maya, expecting the impact of bullets. Instead, he heard familiar laughter. "Hello, William." Marcus Reynolds stepped into view, holding a pistol. "I tried to warn you." Sarah aimed her weapon at Reynolds, but more attackers were flooding in from both entrances. They were surrounded. "The children," Reynolds said calmly. "That's all we want. You can still walk away from this, William. Take the leave of absence. Live." William felt Maya trembling against him, saw Liam's defiant glare so much like James. Why are you doing this?" "Business, William. Just business." Reynolds gestured, and his men moved closer. "These children are valuable assets. Your brother broke a very expensive contract when he took them." "They're not assets," William spat. "They're children. They're product," Reynolds corrected. "Like everything else in this world. Now, step aside." Instead, William pulled both twins closer. "You'll have to kill me first." Reynolds sighed. So dramatic. Just like James. He raised his pistol. "As you wish." The shot never came. The basement window exploded inward as flashbangs detonated throughout the house. FBI tactical teams breached every entrance simultaneously, filling the space with shouts and chaos. FBI, weapons down. Reynolds's men hesitated, caught between orders and survival. It was enough. Sarah tackled the nearest attacker, while William pulled the twins behind the kitchen island. Reynolds turned to flee, but found himself facing a wall of federal agents. When the smoke cleared, Reynolds and his men were in custody. William sat on the kitchen floor, holding the twins, while a medic examined his shoulder wound. "How?" he asked Sarah, who was giving her statement to an FBI agent. She managed a tired smile. "That press conference you announced, it caught some attention. I have friends in the bureau who've been building a case for months. They just needed probable cause for a raid." William looked at the twins, both shaken but unharmed. "Liam, Maya, you're safe now. It's over." Liam shook his head, his young face too serious. "No, Uncle William. Dad said, there's more, much more. The names we memorized, they go all the way to the top." Sarah finished with the FBI agent and joined them. "Then we'll go all the way to the top, together." William nodded, holding his family closer. His shoulder throbbed, and his empire was crumbling. But for the first time since finding the twins, he felt something like hope. "Together," he agreed. Maya looked up at him, her eyes full of trust that broke his heart. "Dad said you'd choose right when the time came." William thought of James, of all the choices that had led to this moment. "I wish I'd chosen right sooner." The hospital room's monotonous beeping matched William's heartbeat as he drifted between consciousness and memory. The shoulder wound had required surgery. The bullet had done more damage than initially thought. In his morphinized state, memories of James flooded back, no longer held at bay by decades of careful compartmentalization. They were children again, running through their father's newspaper office, hiding behind printing presses. James, always following, always watching, always asking why. But why do we print these stories and not those stories? Will. Even at 8, he'd seen through the facade of objective journalism. Sarah's voice pulled him back to the present. "William, the FBI swept your brother's house again. They found something." He opened his eyes to find her holding a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. 2 FBI agents stood by the door, their faces grim, where William's voice was hoarse. Behind a false wall in the study, James, he documented everything. Sarah pulled a chair close to his bed, mindful of the 4 lines. "It goes back 20 years. 20 years. William's mind raced through the timeline. "That's when our father died." Sarah opened the journal carefully, its pages filled with James's precise handwriting. "Your brother started investigating right after your father's death. At first he thought it was just about money laundering through the papers, classified ads." William remembered those days taking over the family business at 28. James, fresh out of journalism school, both of them trying to honor their father's legacy. What did he find? Sarah glanced at the FBI agents before continuing. The classified ads were code. Parents looking for missing children would place specific ads. Your father's paper would alter them slightly before publication, changing words, adding punctuation. It was a message system for the traffickers. The room spun, and not from the medication. "Our father," he knew. "No," Sarah said quickly. "According to James's notes, your father discovered it just before his death. His car accident." She let the implication hang. "Wasn't an accident." William closed his eyes, decades of certainty crumbling, and James spent 20 years tracking it all. "He infiltrated their network," Sarah continued, turning pages, "built trust, learned their systems. That's how he found the twins. Their mother was a journalist in Nigeria, investigating the same network. When she got too close, they took her children." William remembered the twins' solemn faces. "And James got them out. But he knew they'd never be safe unless he brought down the entire operation." Sarah reached a series of pages filled with diagrams and names. "He mapped everything, William. Politicians, judges, business leaders, all connected through a web of shell companies and charitable foundations. A flash of memory hit William James at a charity gala 5 years ago, watching the donors with cold eyes. The foundations, they were all tax shelters and recruitment centers. Sarah's voice hardened. They targeted vulnerable communities, promising education and opportunities. The Future Bright initiative was just the tip of the iceberg. The FBI agent shifted uncomfortably. One stepped forward, introducing herself as Agent Torres. "Mr. Chase, your brother's evidence corroborates a case we've been building for years, but we could never get close enough to the key players." William thought of Reynolds, of board meetings and handshakes, of looking the other way. "Until now, there's more," Sarah said softly, turning to the journal's final pages. "James left you a letter." She handed him the journal, open to his brother's last message. The handwriting was hurried, desperate. "Will, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. I'm sorry for keeping you in the dark, for letting you think I'd lost my mind. I had to protect you, the same way Dad tried to protect us. The twins are everything: proof, witnesses, and hope all at once. Their mother trusted me to save them. I trust you to keep them safe and finish what Dad started." What I continued: "You'll want to burn it all down when you learn the truth. Don't. The company, the networks, the infrastructure, they can be used for good. You just have to be brave enough to look into the darkness first. I never told you this, but that day at the printing press when we were kids, you said something I never forgot. You said newspapers were like lighthouses, helping people find their way through the dark. Be that light, Will. The evidence is all here. Names, dates, accounts, everything needed to expose them. But remember, these people don't just trade in children, they trade in fear. They'll try to make you afraid. Don't let them. Take care of Maya and Liam. They're stronger than they know. Like you, I forgive you for not seeing it sooner. Forgive yourself." Your brother, James Williams' vision blurred as he finished reading. The morphine couldn't touch this kind of pain, the weight of 20 years of blindness, of choices made in ignorance that weren't innocent at all. "The twins," he managed. "Are they still safe?" Sarah nodded. "FBI protective custody. They're asking for you." "James was right," William said, his voice finding strength. "About everything. We don't burn it down, we turn it around. Use their own networks against them." Agent Torres stepped forward. "We'll need your help, Mr. Chase. Your company's resources, your connections. This goes deeper than we imagined." William thought of his father's death, of James's sacrifice, of the twins' lost mother, of all the children still waiting to be found. "When can we start?" Sarah held up a USB drive. James left instructions, detailed ones, about how to convert trafficking networks into rescue operations. He had it all planned out. Of course he did. William felt a smile through his tears. "He always saw clearer than me." The hospital room's beeping continued its steady rhythm, but now it felt less like a dirge and more like a countdown. Time to wake up, time to see clearly, time to be the light. Rain pounded against the windows of James's Victorian house as William and Sarah moved through the darkness with flashlights. The FBI had swept the place 3 times, but James's letter mentioned a hiding place. They hadn't found a secret even the Bureau's thorough search had missed. "The study's this way," William whispered, though they were alone in the house. Years of dust-covered family photos along the hallway. James, with the twins at a park, their father at the old printing press, moments frozen in time. Sarah consulted her tablet, displaying the cryptic instructions from James's letter. He wrote about the place where shadows never move. "Any idea what that means?" William paused in the study doorway, memory striking like lightning. "The sundial." He moved to the western wall, running his hands along the wooden paneling. "When we were kids, this room had a window. Dad installed the sundial outside it. James was obsessed with how the shadow never reached this wall, no matter the time of day. And your father sealed the window when he renovated." Sarah's flashlight beam traced the paneling. "No, William pressed against a section of wood. James did, right after Dad died. The panel clicked, then swung inward, revealing a small cavity. Inside sat a leather-bound book and a USB drive, wrapped in plastic. 20 years of investigation, Sarah breathed, carefully removing the items. Everything he couldn't risk keeping in the open. They set up on James's desk, the diary's pages crackling as they opened it. William's flashlight illuminated the first entry, dated 1 week after their father's funeral. Dad was right. The classifieds aren't just ads. Every Tuesday, same pattern. Children reported missing in Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe. 2 weeks later, matching descriptions in the society pages. Adoptions, charitable relocations. The foundation directors are always there, smiling for photos. Always the same photographers. Always the same caption writer. Follow the bylines. Sarah's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, cross-referencing names. The photographer Michael Chen, he's my uncle. He disappeared 3 months before my sister. William turned pages. Years of investigation unfolding. Shell companies, offshore accounts, political donations. James had mapped it all, drawing connections their father had only begun to uncover. Look at this. Sarah pointed to a series of photographs. Senator Harrison at every major foundation event, but in the background Reynolds. William leaned closer, and behind him, the same 3 men. Sarah pulled up the FBI database on her laptop. Known human traffickers, all reformed after joining the Foundation's rehabilitation program. They never reformed. William's voice was hard. The Foundation gave them legitimacy, access to high society, perfect cover. More pages revealed the network's true scope. Shipping manifests disguised as charitable aid. Private schools serving as distribution centers. Medical records falsified to hide children's true identities. Here, William stopped at a page marked with a red tab. The day before Dad died, he confronted Harrison about the classifieds, threatened to expose everything. Sarah read the entry. Dad knew the risk. Told James Jr. at the press to run the story anyway. Some things matter more than fear. 24 hours later, brake lines cut. Police rule it accident. Harrison attends funeral, offers to buy the paper. Testing waters, testing me. William's hands shook. All these years, I thought Dad's death was random, that James was paranoid. He wasn't paranoid enough. Sarah held up a photo from the diary's final pages. These are satellite images of Highland Grove, not just a schooler processing center. Look at the security, the underground facilities. The twins were supposed to go there. My sister did go there. Sarah's voice cracked. James tracked her transfer. She's in Europe now, but he found a pattern. Every 3 months, they moved them. Never the same place twice. William turned to the diary's last entry, dated the day before James disappeared. Found proof. Harrison isn't just involved, he's directing everything. Offshore accounts trace back to his family's fortune. 3 generations of trafficking, hidden behind philanthropy. The twins are my evidence. Their mother trusted me with proof before they killed her. USB contains it all. Will knows what to do when he's ready to see. If I don't make it, the truth is in the shadows, where light never reaches. Like Dad always said, shadows hide truth, but they can't change it. A floorboard creaked behind them. William and Sarah spun, flashlights cutting through darkness. The study door was open, wider than they'd left it. FBI teams are watching the house, Sarah whispered, drawing her gun. No. William's blood ran cold. That was the plan. But look. He pointed to the window, where multiple black SUVs sat silently in the rain. No FBI vehicles in sight. Sarah's phone displayed a message from Agent Torres. Teams diverted to Senator's residence. Emergency protocol. It's a trap. William grabbed the diary and USB. They knew we'd come here. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Multiple sets, moving with precision. Back exit. Sarah was already moving. Through the kitchen, William led the way, memories of childhood games guiding them through the dark house. James and I used to sneak out that way to avoid a voice cut through the darkness. Going somewhere, Mr. Chase. Flashlight beams converged on them from both directions. Armed men in tactical gear filled both exits. And there, in the center, stood Senator Harrison himself, elegant even at midnight in a house full of killers. "The diary, please." Harrison's voice was smooth as aged whiskey. "Let's not make this messier than necessary." William clutched the evidence of his family's 20-year war against shadows. Sarah's gun moved between targets, knowing they were outmatched. Through the kitchen window, red and blue lights finally appeared in the distance. But they were minutes away, and Harrison's men would need seconds. "Time to choose, Mr. Chase." Harrison smiled. "Just like your father did. Just like your brother did. What matters more than fear?" The Chase Media Group auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Hundreds of journalists, cameras, and social media feeds focused on the empty podium bearing the company logo. William stood backstage, adrenaline masking the pain from his recent injuries. The diary and USB drive felt heavy in his suit. Pocket evidence salvaged from Harrison's ambush through means he was still processing. "Feeds are live in all 50 states, Sarah reported, checking her tablet. "International coverage confirmed. Even networks that tried to bury it can't ignore it now." Harrison's people. William adjusted his tie, hand shaking slightly, still trying to breach the building's security. "But Agent Torres has teams on every floor. They won't get through before you finish." The memory of their escape from James's house still burned fresh. The timely arrival of FBI backup. The firefight that left 3 of Harrison's men dead. The senator himself slipping away in the chaos. But not before William had captured everything on his phone, including Harrison's inadvertent confession. 5 minutes, a stage manager called. Sarah gripped William's arm. "The twins are secure. You're sure? Safe house in Canada. Torres's most trusted team." He checked his phone one last time. Maya said Liam hasn't stopped reciting names and numbers, making sure he doesn't forget anything before the testimony. "And the failsafe?" William nodded. James's final safeguard, a dead man's switch that would release everything to every major news outlet if anything happened to William during the broadcast. Active, but Harrison doesn't know that yet. The stage manager signaled. William stepped toward the podium lights, but Sarah held him back for one moment. "Your brother would be proud," she whispered. The bright lights hit William as he took the stage. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. He could feel the weight of millions of eyes through the lenses, waiting. "Good morning," he began, his media training warring with the thunder of his heart. "My name is William Chase. For 30 years, I have led one of the largest media companies in the world. Today, I'm here to tell you how that company, my company, helped facilitate the largest child trafficking operation in history." The room erupted. William held up his hand, continuing despite the chaos. 20 years ago, my father discovered that Chase Media Group's publications were being used to coordinate trafficking operations. He died trying to expose the truth. My brother spent 2 decades gathering evidence, sacrificing everything, including his life, to finish what our father started. He held up the diary. "This journal contains names, dates, bank accounts, proof of how respected charitable foundations, political figures, and media organizations worked together to traffic thousands of children across international borders." The auditorium doors burst open. Security teams moved to intercept men in suits. Harrison's lawyers, right on schedule. "Mr. Chase," one called out, "we have a cease and desist order filed by Senator Harrison, I assume." William's voice carried over the commotion. The same Senator Harrison who, 12 hours ago, led an armed team to attempt to silence this investigation. He nodded to the technical team. The auditorium screens lit up with footage from James's house. Harrison's face, clear as he threatened William, his armed men visible, his confession about generations of trafficking captured in perfect audio. The lawyers froze. The room fell silent. But this isn't just about one senator, William continued. The networks we uncovered span continents. They include names you know, faces you trust, organizations you support. He began listing them, each name landing like a bomb. CEOs, politicians, religious leaders, celebrities. The screens behind him filled with evidence photographs, financial records, witness statements. These people counted on our silence. They counted on our fear. They counted on the power of their positions too. The lights cut out. Emergency systems kicked in as panic rippled through the crowd. William kept speaking, his voice rising. They counted on control, on our willingness to look away, to accept their lies. Sarah's voice cut through his earpiece. Harrison's people breached the power systems. Backup generators compromised. William pulled out his phone, activating the live stream feature. But we're not looking away anymore. Every major news outlet in the world is receiving this evidence as I speak. Every law enforcement agency, every human rights organization. The auditorium doors crashed open again. Armed men poured in as people screamed and scattered. FBI agents engaged them, creating chaos. You can't stop the truth, William shouted over the mayhem, his phone broadcasting every second. Not anymore. Through the chaos, he spotted Harrison himself entering the auditorium, rage distorting his distinguished features. Cut the feeds, the senator roared. Shut him down, but it was too late. Sarah's tablet showed the viewing numbers exploding, millions watching, sharing, the story spreading like wildfire across social media. My brother wrote something in his final entry. William's voice carried through the chaos. Shadows hide truth, but they can't change it. Today, we turn on the lights. Harrison reached for something inside his jacket. FBI agents converged. Gunshots rang out. But William kept speaking, even as he was pulled toward safety, even as the world erupted around him. Because somewhere, the twins were watching. Somewhere, Sarah's sister might be seeing this. Somewhere, the children still trapped in darkness might finally see hope. The truth, like light, couldn't be contained once released. And in that moment, as chaos engulfed the auditorium, William finally understood what his father and brother had died knowing. Some things really do matter more than fear. The FBI safe room hummed with activity, as dozens of screens displayed news coverage from around the world. 48 hours after the press conference, William watched city after city erupt in protests. Outside corporate headquarters, outside charitable foundations, outside government buildings. The truth had ignited a firestorm. Latest numbers, Sarah announced, entering with fresh reports. 700 arrests across 12 countries, 32 foundation facilities raided, over 300 children rescued so far. William touched one of the screens, showing crowds outside Chase Media Group's headquarters. Their signs told stories. No more silence. Justice for the children. Truth over power. Some carried photos of missing children faces that had been ignored for years. Harrison's still claiming mental illness. He asked, though he knew the answer. His lawyers are trying. Sarah pulled up video footage of the senator being led from the auditorium in handcuffs, still ranting about conspiracy theories. But 3 of his security team have already turned state's evidence. They're confirming everything: decades of trafficking, political protection, the whole network. Agent Torres joined them, her tablet displaying more updates. We've got people talking now. Reynolds just cut a deal: full confession in exchange for protection. He's naming judges who buried cases, cops who looked the other way, executives who laundered money, and the children. William's voice softened. Recovery teams are working around the clock. Torres showed them a map dotted with rescue operations. Your brother's intelligence was solid. Every location he documented, every transfer point we're finding kids exactly where he said they'd be. Sarah's phone buzzed. She checked it, her face lighting up for the first time in days. They found her, my sister. She's alive. William grabbed her hand as she steadied herself against a desk. Safe house in Prague. she continued, tears flowing freely. Just like James wrote in his diary, they're bringing her home. Before William could respond, the safe room door burst open. An FBI analyst rushed in, face pale. "Sir, you need to see this." He pulled up new footage on the main screen. Live from Highland Grove, the supposedly abandoned facility was now surrounded by police vehicles and news crews. But it wasn't the law enforcement presence that caught William's attention. It was the crowd. Hundreds of people pressed against the police barriers, parents of missing children, former victims, activists. They carried photos, documents, stories that matched James's evidence. Years of silence breaking all at once. "They've been coming all day," the analyst explained. "Every hour brings more. They're finding each other, sharing information. Social media's exploding with testimonies." Harrison's control was based on isolation, Sarah realized, making each victim feel alone, powerless. That's over now. William watched a mother on screen holding up a photo of her missing daughter, telling reporters her story. Behind her, others nodded, holding up similar photos, similar stories. A chorus of voices, too loud to ignore. His phone lit up with a message from the Canadian safe house. A photo of the twins watching the news coverage, their faces a mix of fear and hope. "Sir," Torres called out. Another development. The Foundation's board of directors. They're turning on each other. Our phones are ringing non-stop. Everyone's trying to cut deals, save themselves. "Let them burn each other," William said quietly. "The truth will finish what's left." Sarah was organizing victim statements on her laptop. "We've got parents scheduling press conferences, survivors starting support groups. People are done being afraid." "Mr. Chase," another analyst approached. "You should know Chase Media Group's stock is in freefall. The board is calling for an emergency meeting." William nodded, unsurprised. "Let it fall, we'll rebuild it clean. No more shadows." The screens continued their relentless display of a world transforming. Arrests in London, raids in Dubai, demonstrations in Singapore. Every hour brought new revelations, new faces, new voices joining the chorus. "William," Sarah's voice was urgent. She held up her tablet. "Listen to this." A news anchor was reporting breaking news. Sources confirmed that Senator Harrison has been found dead in his holding cell. Initial reports suggest suicide, though investigators. The room fell silent. "It's not over," Torres warned. "Men like Harrison, they have contingencies. Loyal people, true believers." As if confirming her words, a new alert flashed across the screens. William felt his blood freeze as he read the headline. "Breaking, armed group storms, Canadian safe house. Multiple casualties reported. Status of key witnesses unknown." Sarah grabbed her coat. The twins. William was already moving. "Get us a helicopter. Now, sir," Torres called after them. "Harrison's death, the attack, this isn't a coincidence. Someone's trying to bury the truth with him." "They're too late," William said, checking his weapon. "The truth's already out there. But those kids," he thought of James, of promises made. "They're all that's left of my brother. All that's left of hope." The safe room erupted into action as orders were given. Teams mobilized. On the screens behind them, the world continued to shake with revelations. But for William, everything narrowed to one thought: reach the twins before the last shadows of Harrison's empire could claim to more victims. Sarah joined him in the elevator, her face set with determination. "We're not losing anyone else to these monsters." "No," William agreed as the doors closed. "No more silence. No more shadows. No more lost children." Above them, helicopter rotors began to spin. The Canadian safe house burned against the night sky as William and Sarah's helicopter circled overhead. Below, gunfire flickered between trees while FBI teams engaged the attackers. Emergency vehicles' lights painted the snow in alternating red and blue. There, Sarah pointed to movement near the property's edge, 3 figures rushing toward a waiting SUV. Even from above, William recognized the twins' small forms being pushed by a woman in black. "Take us down," William ordered the pilot. But before they could land, the SUV peeled away, tires throwing snow. "Follow that vehicle," Sarah commanded, already coordinating with ground teams through her headset. "All units, suspects heading east on Provincial Road 27 with hostages." The helicopter swooped low, spotlight illuminating the fleeing SUV. William studied the woman through tactical binoculars, something nagging at his memory. "Wait." He adjusted the focus. "I know her." The woman glanced up at the helicopter, her face briefly illuminated. Sarah gasped. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Nina Roberts," William said, the pieces clicking into place. "James's contact at the foundation, the one who helped him rescue the twins." "William," Sarah's voice shook. "That's not just his contact. That's their mother." The SUV swerved onto a forest road, forcing the helicopter to weave between trees. William's mind raced through implications. "She's supposed to be dead. James said they killed her. James said a lot of things." A new voice crackled through their head, said Torres, patched in from command. "We just found something in Harrison's personal files about James." "Not now," William started, but Torres continued. "Your brother wasn't just investigating the trafficking ring, William. He was part of it. From the beginning." The SUV burst from the forest onto a private airstrip where a small jet waited, engines running. The woman Nina hurried the twins toward the plane. "That's not true," William insisted, but doubt crept in. James's convenient discoveries, his perfect intelligence, his access to the Foundation's inner workings. "Harrison's files confirm it," Torres pressed. "James helped design their transportation networks. He used Chase Media's resources to hide their operations. Everything, the evidence, the diary, the twins, it was all orchestrated." The helicopter landed as FBI teams converged on the airstrip. William and Sarah jumped out, weapons ready, advancing on the plane. Nina turned, pushing the twins behind her. "Stay back," she shouted over the engine noise. "They're my children. They're evidence," Sarah called back. "Witnesses." Nina laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Witnesses, they're props. James's final manipulation. Ask them. Ask them what their father really taught them to memorize." William looked at the twins, saw fear in their eyes, but not of Nina, of him. "Liam," he said softly, "what did James make you memorize?" "The truth, this time." The boy's voice trembled. "Account numbers, contacts, escape routes. Everything needed to restart the operation if it was ever exposed. Dad said we had to keep the business alive." Maya stepped forward. He said Uncle William would believe anything if it came from family. That guilt would make him see what Dad wanted him to see. The world tilted beneath William's feet. Every revelation, every discovery, all carefully planned. His brother, the monster, wearing a hero's mask. The newspaper ads, he managed. Dad's death. "Your father discovered what James was building," Nina said. "James killed him to protect the operation, then spent 20 years using Chase Media to expand it. The perfect covert, grieving brother, carrying on the family legacy. While trafficking children, Sarah's gun remained steady on Nina. Including your own. My children were never trafficked." Nina's voice hardened. "I ran logistics for the operation. James and I, we built it together. The twins were our pride, our legacy, until James decided to use them as insurance." FBI teams surrounded the plane as Nina continued. He knew the operation had grown too large. Rivals were moving in. Harrison was losing control. So James planned one final manipulation: his own death. The evidence. The grieving brothers' crusade for justice. The perfect distraction while we transferred assets, moved key personnel, prepared to rebuild elsewhere. Using Chase Media's resources, William realized, using my guilt, my need to believe James died a hero. "The operation wasn't destroyed," Nina said. "It was evacuated, transformed, ready to emerge stronger once the dust settled. James's final masterpiece. until Harrison broke under pressure. Sarah concluded, threatened to expose everything. Harrison was weak, Nina spat. James knew he would break eventually. Had plans for that too. She looked at William. Your press conference. The worldwide exposure. Exactly what James wanted. Total chaos. All eyes on the old network, while the new one takes root in the shadows. William lowered his weapon. Decades of certainty crumbling. Why tell us this now? Because you succeeded too well. Nina's laugh was bitter. The public reaction, the global exposure, it went beyond James's predictions. Harrison's death wasn't planned. The entire operation is truly compromised now. So we're taking our children and disappearing. Starting fresh. They're witnesses, Sarah insisted. To all of it. They're my children, Nina corrected. And they know the truth about their father. The real truth. She looked at William. James never cared about saving anyone. He cared about power, control, building something bigger than your father ever imagined. The twins moved closer to their mother, their eyes full of a knowledge no child should possess. Uncle William, Liam said softly. Dad said you'd figure it out eventually. Said when you did. He held out a phone, James's phone. William took it with trembling hands. A video file was queued up. He pressed play. James's face filled the screen, recorded shortly before his staged death. He smiled, that same smile from their childhood, now twisted with something darker. Hello, brother. If you're watching this, you've finally seen through the story I wrote for you. The grieving hero, the crusading brother, the perfect mark. You always needed to believe in something, Will. Always needed a cause. So I gave you one. Used your guilt, your media empire, your desperate need to prove yourself worthy of the Chase name, and you performed beautifully. William watched, numb, as his brother continued. The operation isn't destroyed, evolved. Every arrest, every exposed connection, every rescued child, they're all part of the transformation. The old network burns while the new one rises. A perfect phoenix, built on the ashes of your redemption story. The video ended. In the silence that followed, broken only by the plane's idling engines, William faced the ultimate truth. His greatest victory was his brother's final triumph. Nina gestured toward the plane. We should go. No. William's voice found strength. James was right about one thing. I needed to believe in something, but not anymore. He raised his weapon again. Now, I just need to do what's right. Sarah moved to his side, her gun steady. Around them, FBI teams closed in. The truth is out there now, William continued. The real truth, not James's story, not the Foundation's lies. All of it. And this time, he looked at the twins, seeing them clearly at last. This time, we save everyone, even the ones who don't want to be saved. Nina's face hardened as she realized the truth. Her children would be witnesses after all, not to the story James had scripted, but to the final chapter he never planned, the one where light truly banished all shadows. The handcuffs closed around her wrists as the twins were led to safety. Above them, dawn broke over the airstrip, painting the snow in colors of truth and revelation. The story James had written was over. It was time to write a new one.